All right. So there's Wilson. His Republican opponent is Charles Evan Hughes. Okay? Charles Evans Hughes. I'm blocking part of the name, but you can see it up there on the PowerPoint. I've already told you he kept us out of the war thing, right? The election's in November. Wilson's running on his progressive accomplishments, but the fact that he's kept us out of the war. Uh, what's going to happen? Wilson wins big time. Here's the slide. Next slide, please. Here's your election map. Wilson wins with 49% of the vote. So decisive, a pretty impressive victory. Okay, I almost said decisive, but it's a victory. It's a much better victory than what he had in 1912 when he only got 40, 42, 45% of the vote. It's not important. Okay? So Wilson has won. Okay, he's defeated Charles Evans Hughes. Okay? So Wilson gets another 4 years. Now, actually, I can tell you the real reason Hughes lost. Go back a slide. Says this feature is not available during recording. See, I'm learning as we go here. You notice Hughes had a beard. Are there any presidents in the 20th century with beards? I think not. Charles Evans Hughes is in the wrong century. He looks like he should be running for president in the 1800s. All the presidents in the 20th century are clean shaven, except for Roosevelt, who only has a mustache because he's the transition figure, don't you see? So Wilson has another 4 years. Now, he knows the situation in Europe is still going on. It's bogged down in this war. And another way to maybe keep the U.S. out of the war would be to end the war. And so Wilson, since we're a neutral power, will try to reach out towards the Europeans and offer to help broker some kind of peace negotiations. He thinks the United States, being a neutral power, could broker, we could be a middleman, we could maybe bring all the parties together and talk and see if we can't solve this thing. And he says what we need is a peace without victory. One way to get the war over would be get everybody to agree to stop trying to win something. Okay? People, France wants the Alsace-Lorraine back, which they had lost in 1871 with the previous war of Germany. The Germans want this. The British want that. Everybody wants something. And Wilson's saying what we need to do is just negotiate something to end the war, and everybody stop trying to worry about coming out ahead. The problem is his reaching out to the Europeans doesn't work. At this point, they've been at war for 2 years. They've spent untold number of lives, millions of pounds and francs and marks and money. Okay? And Wilson's basically saying, well, let's kind of call it off and work something out. And at this point, the European powers have too much invested in this thing to just walk away from it. And so Wilson will find that his attempts to negotiate a peace don't really go anywhere. Next slide. Well, what's going to happen? Wilson would, of course, win re-election in November of 1916. He would take the oath of office for a second term in March of 1917. And almost immediately, he ends up having to deal with a war. On February 1st, 1917, the Germans announce they will re-begin unrestricted submarine warfare. They've decided that they really think they have the Allies on the ropes, and they just push through a little harder. Maybe they can go ahead and wrap this thing up. Now, if they begin unrestricted submarine warfare again, Wilson has threatened to break off diplomatic relations with them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that will advance into a war. So the Germans are taking calculated risk here. We restart unrestricted submarine warfare. The Americans, break off diplomatic relations. That's no guarantee they'll actually go to war over this. And even if the Americans did decide to go to war with Germany over this, are we really a threat to Germany? We're on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. We don't have much of an army. We couldn't even catch Pancho Villa next door in Mexico. Are we going to go across the Atlantic and knock the Germans out of the game? It would take us months to mobilize an army and get them across the Atlantic. So Germans here are looking at this and saying, we'll restart unrestricted submarine warfare. We have the British on the ropes. We can lock this thing up before the Americans can even ever get around to doing anything about it. And so, in fairness to the Germans, they do announce, they give warning that on February 1st they're going to start this thing back up. And they do, and of course some American ships will get hit in this. Okay? And so Wilson will break off diplomatic relations, which is what he said he would do. So the situation's getting tense. And then, just kind of put the icing on the cake, is the interception by British intelligence of the Zimmermann telegram. Now, Arthur Zimmermann was the German foreign minister. It's kind of like being Secretary of State. And what Zimmermann does is he sends a telegram to the British ambassador in Mexico. And we thoughtfully have a picture of it here because the British have supplied us with a translation. It says here, if you can't read it, it says, we, that's the Germans, we intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. There's the phrase again. We shall endeavor, in spite of this, to keep the United States of America neutral. In the event of this not succeeding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis. Make war together, make peace together, generous financial support, and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. I don't know why they didn't mention California. The settlement in detail is left up to you. You will inform the president of the above, and then part of it disappears behind my smiling face. But you get the gist of it. What the Germans are doing is they're telling their ambassador, go to the Mexicans, tell them that if the United States goes to war, then Mexico should ally itself with Germany. This would keep the Americans tied up on the border, and they wouldn't be able to send troops over to Europe. And then when Germany wins the war, which they will, because they're Germans, right? Then Mexico could have back all the land they lost back in 1848 under the terms of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Now, the Mexican government, to its credit, wants no part of this. They've already kind of racked with internal revolution, thank you very much. And honestly, the last war of the United States didn't go that well. So the Mexican government's really not interested in this proposal. But Wilson's got a problem. The Germans are trying to get our neighbors, and we don't have real good relations with Mexico, but they're trying to advocate that our neighbors go to war with us. And this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. To use a metaphor. Not a metaphor. Whatever it is. And so, with the Germans having resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, and with the Zimmermann telegram, Wilson will go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war against Germany. Slide. There's Wilson, the Stern College professor on the right, talking to Congress. Now, here's where Wilson might have stuck his foot in it. He sells this very much as a great crusade. Could have gone in and said, we need to go to war with Germany because they're attacking civilian shipping, because they're trying to get our neighbors riled up against us, all kinds of reasons. But maybe he oversells. He says, we need to go to war to make the world, quote, safe for the democracy. Try that again. Make the world safe for democracy. That's a tall order. And a lot of people are kind of against war. People get hurt. It's expensive. And so some people are, hesitant to do this. He says, but he says, this will be the war to end all wars. Well, who can't get on board for that? Oh, I'm not really too keen on war, but this will be the war that ends war as we know it. Oh, geez, maybe this is worth fighting. And so maybe he oversells what he's trying to do. And Congress votes to go to war with Germany. Which leads us to the essay question, which right now I don't know if we'll have an essay question on the test because we're still kind of playing it by ear. But the essay question basically says, did the United States go to war for legalistic reasons, moralistic reasons, or idealistic reasons? So you can ponder that, but I won't go into it right now. I'll do a quick nutshell. Legalism, unrestricted submarine warfare, trying to get our neighbors to go to war with us. Is that, like legal type stuff? Moral reasons. What did the Germans, the way they're doing unrestricted submarine warfare is getting people killed. They also had a bad reputation on things they had done in Belgium and some of the other occupied countries, which I won't go into right now. Or idealism. Did we go to war to make the world safe for democracy? Well, gosh darn, that's a good idea. Anyway, so these are all what's going on. Slide.